The Brony fandom is not going anywhere. The Brony fandom is not dead. It is not dying. The Brony fandom is here to stay. And I am here to tell you why. Hey guys, Ranger here, and welcome back to another video. I've been thinking about doing this video before, but considering MLP's anniversary came up just recently, I decided now would be a good time to do this video. Unfortunately, I didn't get to do it around the same time of the anniversary, so I'm a little late with it, but better late than never. I had to work through the entire weekend, the MLP anniversary, so I wasn't able to do anything for that, so I'm really sorry for that. But better late than never. But I wanted to make this video, and there are two things that I want to cover in this video. The first is I want to explain why that the Brony fandom is not dying, nor is it dead, and why it's not going anywhere. And then the second part of the video, I want to give my theories as to why people for years have been theorizing this or believing it to be true. So first off, as I said at the start of this video, the Brony fandom is not dead, it is not dying, it isn't going anywhere. And I'm sure of that. Now I have seen videos in my recommendations asking, is the Brony fandom dying? Is the Brony fandom dead? Or stating the Brony fandom is dying or the Brony fandom is dead. I have seen these videos appear in my recommendations, and I've never watched any of them, so I don't know the context of those videos, so I apologize if I'm jumping the shark with this, but I'm here to tell you that the Brony fandom is not dying, that the Brony fandom is not going anywhere. I know exactly what you're thinking. Why should you listen to me? Like other people have been saying for years the fandom is dead or dying. Why should you listen to me? Basically, I'm giving my thoughts in this video. I'm giving my thoughts in this. And these are things that I am 100% certain about. Now, first off, the Brony fandom is not going anywhere because, number one, just a few people can make a fandom. And this is something that I've seen people basically speculate ever since 2013, 2014, is that at some point everybody is going to leave the fandom and there won't be anybody left. What people fail to realize is that there are people that are still in this fandom, and there will be people that will stay in this fandom. You're wrong. Anybody that has ever thought that there are people that everybody will at someday leave this fandom, you're wrong. The fandom doesn't need 1,000 or more people to keep the fandom going. You don't need a huge number of people to make a fandom. Just a small number of people can make a fandom. Just a few people can make a fandom. And there is more than enough. There is more than just a few people that are still in this fandom, that are dedicated to it, that are going to be here for good. I am one of them. And it's the 1-year anniversary now of MLP. MLP FIM ended last year, 1 year ago. Now, there might be somebody out there thinking, oh my gosh, you're still in the fandom? Obviously, if you think that, obviously you don't know me as well as you think you do. I've said before, I'm in this fandom for good. And even if everybody else leaves this fandom, I am still going to be here. I will carry that torch. I will carry the flag of this fandom by myself if I have to. As long as there is a beat in my heart and a breath in my body, this fandom will not die. I will keep this fandom going by myself if I have to. But I know I don't have to do it alone, because I know for a fact that there are people out there that are going to be and willing and wants to stand right there next to me and keep this fandom going. And there are still people that are just joining the fandom, even today. And so the fandom is not going anywhere. Besides the people that have been in this fandom for a while that are still here, you also have the newcomers that are going to be here for a long, long time. And that are going to be here for good. And so the fandom is not going anywhere. The fandom is not dying out because newcomers are coming into the fandom even today. And then there are still people like myself that are still in this fandom, that still love this fandom, love the creativity of the fandom, love the people in the fandom, love what the fandom has done, and also loves the show. And it's people like me and many others that will stand next to me that are going to keep the flame of this fandom burning strong. And so the fandom isn't going anywhere because there are people like me and so many others that are here for good. And as long as we're around, as long as I'm around, this fandom isn't going anywhere. The second reason I say the fandom is not going anywhere ever is because the Brony fandom isn't any different than other things that exist. TV shows, movies, video games, and even music. People think that, and for years people have thought that just because MLP ends, that everybody is just going to leave the fandom, that it's all going to just fade away. There are plenty of shows, movies, video games, and music out there, like eras, that will never be forgotten because there are still fans of them today. Take a look at shows like Danny Phantom, Kim Possible. They've been over for years, but there are still fans of those shows. There are still fans. There is still fan fiction and fan art being created of those even today. Those fandoms are still alive because fans are still keeping it going years after the shows ended. And not just that, but look at video games. Look how many video games have become pop culture icons. I mean, have obtained cult status that many people love today. There are tons of video games that, and there are tons of video game characters and mascots that people still love today, and there's still a small fandom of those fans today. I mean, heck, Banjo-Kazooie is one of them. Last really good Banjo-Kazooie game was Banjo-Tooie, but it's been years, but there are still fans of Banjo-Kazooie. And there's still stuff being created by fans even today. Not just that, but look at old TV shows and movies, black and white shows. Look at shows like I Love Lucy, Dick Van Dyke, just to name a couple. I wasn't even around in that time period, but I love those shows. And those shows are continuing to air, and there are new people. Every new generation, there are people that are getting into those shows because the flame is reigniting with the next generation, and they are keeping it going. Same thing with different eras of of music. The 50s, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s. I wasn't even around in these periods, but I like the 80s. I love the 80s. I listened to synthwave and AOR, which is designed to sound like 80s music. The 80s, I love the 80s, but again, people like us, we're keeping it going. There are people right now, even on YouTube, that are doing reactions to 80s songs, popular 80s songs. They've never heard them before, and they're just now listening to it, and they are loving it. And so there are new generations that are keeping that going. And these should continue to exist so that new generations can enjoy them. MLP is no different. It's the same thing. The same principles should be applied. Besides the existing people, there are new generations that are going to fall in love with it as well, and they too are going to keep it going. And so if you honestly think that people should just let MLP go and move on, do you listen to the 80s? Well, you need to stop then, because the 80s are over. If you're going to use your logic against others, you need to apply it to your own life. And so, like I said, MLP is not going anywhere because MLP is going to be right up there with plenty of other TV shows that were popular, that people will continue to cherish and hang on to for generations to come. Not just this one, but the next and the next. And so if you honestly think that people should just let MLP go, then anything that you have going on in your life, any old movies or TV shows or music that you listen to, you need to stop. Put up or shut up. That's what I believe. Don't use your logic on other people and expect them. Do not use your own logic on other people, and then not heed your own logic. So no, the Brony fandom is not going anywhere because there are people like me and others that are going to keep this fandom going. You don't need 1,000 or 100,000 people to keep a fandom going. Just a small number of people can make a fandom, and there is more than just a small number of people that are going to keep this fandom going. Number two, there are people like me who love the show. We're not going anywhere. Again, I'm still a fan of Danny Phantom and Kim Possible even today. Those have been over for years now. And MLP, right up there, it's going to be right there. It's going to be something I hold on to for the rest of my life, the same as these other shows. And then there are people that are new generations that are going to keep, that the torch is going to be passed. There are new generations coming in, and the torch is going to be passed to them. And so the fandom is not going anywhere. And I'm proud and happy to tell you it's not. The fandom has never been dying. The fandom is not going to die. The fandom is here to stay. Even if there are people that will leave the fandom, there are still new people that will come in. But there are still existing fans like me that will still continue to be here, even so. And so now that I said the first part of the video, now I want to move on to the second part. Why that people have been saying for years that the fandom is dying. Now this part of the video will actually cover some things I've never heard anybody else say any of these things. So I'm not trying to step on anybody's toes, and I'm not trying to be any bit controversial. I don't. I hate conflict. I hate controversy, and I don't want to start anything. But this is all just conjecture. This is all just theory and things based upon my own personal views, what I have seen. And so I'm not directing this at anybody, but this is just all theory, but it does make a lot of sense. And so here I'm going to talk about why people have been saying for years that the fandom is dying. And the first theory is simply because it was a popular fad. There are plenty of people that jump on board to fads whenever they become a popular thing. And as soon as the fad is over with, they get out of it. I mean, heck, remember back a few years ago whenever fidget spinners were a thing all across YouTube? And so that's one theory. Another theory is basically bandwagon hoppers. And to me, bandwagon hoppers are not real fans. Bandwagon hoppers are people that jump on board because it's popular. And it doesn't matter what if they do stuff for that, the moment that it begins to dwindle in popularity, that's whenever they jump ship because it's no longer a popular thing and they move to the next popular thing in line. To me, these are not fans. These are not real fans. Now, I know some people would argue with me and get mad at me for saying that, but I'm also applying that same logic to other things in life. If there is anybody out there that, if, like any band, name any band out there, any music artist of any genre, any fan that were a fan of these people or this artist whenever they were popular, and then the moment that their popularity dwindled, they suddenly jumped ship, they weren't real fans. That's what I consider. Real fans will stay long after it's over with. And again, the people that left the fandom, and so that also brings me to another thing, which is people that just left the fandom whenever the show itself ended. Again, not real fans. Again, to me, if you're going to do that, then you need to apply that logic in other areas of life. Do you like Elvis? Well, you need to stop because he's dead. He's not coming back. Do you like the Beatles? Well, you need to stop listening to them. You need to apply your logic into other areas of life. But real fans will stay. I still like Elvis. I still like the Beatles, Beach Boys. I still listen to this. There are plenty of bands out there that don't do anything anymore, plenty of artists, but it's still fun to listen to their music. Real fans continue to enjoy something long after it's over with. Those, to me, are real fans. It doesn't just, and I'm not just saying that about MLP, I'm saying that about other TV shows, movies, video games, music. I'm saying that about any of this. Real fans will stay. And bandwagon hoppers, bandwagon fans, they jump ship whenever the popularity begins to dwindle. Another theory is simply because, another theory is fear of legal issues. And this, again, is a theory, but it does kind of make sense. Whenever the fandom first was really starting and people were creating a lot of really fresh content, fan art, animation, fan fiction, YouTube videos and such, um, in the beginning, people kind of had the freedom to do what they wanted to. But then, unfortunately, some people started getting cease and desists. And they started handing out, video games that people were working on, animations, they suddenly had to stop. And so I think that some people may have gotten fearful. Some people may have been afraid that they wouldn't be able, that they would also face a cease and desist if they continue with any projects that they had, and so they decided to back out of it. Another theory is just simply because some people just lost interest and moved on to something else. Now, I cannot fault these people for this because every single one of us can honestly say, can name a point in time where we were at one point a fan of something, but we moved on with it. And this does contradict what I said about real fans, but in some ways it also comes with age. Um, because as a kid, and this kind of can go for younger people that started watching the show. Like some people, whenever I was little, there were shows and things that I was a fan of at the time that I'm no longer a fan of. Thomas the Tank Engine. I was a fan of it whenever I was little, but I'm not a fan of it anymore. I just got out of it. But some adults are pretty much can be the exact same way. At one point, years ago, I used to listen to country music and I stopped. Now I love power metal, synthwave, AOR. So, in some ways, for some people, it just comes down to losing interest in it, and so they just moved on. Another theory is, and this is kind of going to sway into the a bit more controversial thing and more sensitive topic is lack of attention for that individual. Now, I'm not pointing fingers at anybody. I'm not. But I know that this has existed in other fandoms before, and I know for a fact the Brony fandom is no different. People that at one point they started, they joined and they started maybe doing art, fan fiction, animation, or music, and they themselves obtained a good following in the fandom. But then, whenever the popularity for the fandom, or sorry, for the show began to dwindle, and they weren't getting as many hits or views or something, then that's whenever they decided to call it quits and move on to something that was more popular, so they again could get more attention. Now, again, I don't know anybody directly, but considering the amount of people that are in the fandom, and again, not just MLP, not just the Brony fandom, I know this has happened in other fandoms too, because it's for some people it's easy to let that fame and popularity in a fandom go to their head, and then whenever they start losing that popularity themselves, that's whenever they begin to call it quits and move on to something where they can get a fresh start and have more popularity again. Another theory is fear of Another theory is fear of not having any doors open to them in the future. And basically, this is people left the fandom because they were afraid that the Brony fandom would be more of a restriction for them and future things that they wanted to do. And I've seen people in the fandom, in the Brony fandom, I've seen them leave the fandom, and because they wanted to branch off and do other projects. Maybe they wanted to do other animations, maybe had hope to get maybe a career at an animation company or something. And so they decided to leave because they felt that being a part of the fandom and doing fan works would restrict them as opposed to actually open doors for them. And personally, I'm not going to hold these people at fault. I'm not holding anything against these people. I can totally understand the concept of, wanting to have doors open to you for something that you had a passion in. I'm all for that. The only thing that I wish is that people would have had more consideration and kept, make some sort of backup or alternative so that they could preserve their works that they did in the fandom for fans that were fans of theirs that continue to follow them, and preserve it instead of just taking it all away and expecting everybody to just follow them through the bowels of heck, no matter their decision. That much I am against. Um, but I figure some people left because they just felt restricted and they felt that they wouldn't get as much notoriety if they were a part of the fandom, and they were basically holding what they would consider as holding themselves back due to ponies. Another theory is because Another theory is some people left, unfortunately, due to peer pressure. And I'm not going to lie. the Brony fandom has come under scrutiny before from a lot of people outside the fandom because Bronies themselves, myself included, I'm not putting myself out of this. The Brony fandom is very unique as it has challenged a stereotype, but the Brony fandom to me is completely awesome. And I love it. But some people caved to that peer pressure and they left the fandom because they felt ridiculed, made fun of, and they just caved to that peer pressure and just they could not take that and they just left. And again, I don't condone this because if you let peer pressure dictate and control your life, you'll never really understand true happiness whenever you're not doing what you want to do, but you're living your life based upon others' perceptions of you. And so I know for a fact there are people, quite a bit of people I know that left the fandom because they felt peer pressure, because they saw the ridicule that other people were getting. Maybe they were getting it themselves. And so they left because they couldn't handle it. But again, I have to wonder, what are you going to do in the future? Because there are plenty of things in life that you're going to do, that you're going to face, you're going to face ridicule. You're going to face peer pressure. You can't give in to it, and you have to stand your ground. You can't let everybody's decisions like that of you dictate who you are and what you have an interest in. But unfortunately, some people have. Another theory is some people left because they felt that the fandom was too negative. And again, I don't condone this because I'm not going to sugarcoat it. There are people in the fandom before that have caused a stir, that have caused problems. And unfortunately, the media early on wanted to highlight the fandom in a negative way. It was only people within the fandom that actually knew that there was more to the fandom than what met the eye. But that's the way that the media is. The media doesn't want, it doesn't matter what it is. The media never wants to highlight anything good. It always wants to highlight the bad. But people left, I know, because they felt that the fandom was too much of a cesspool of negativity. And the truth was, there were some people and there were some areas of the fandom that were like that. But then again, you're not going to have a fandom and you're not going to have a single fandom. Every fandom has its bad apples. You're never going to have a fandom that doesn't have bad apples in it. Every fandom does. It's just something you accept. Life itself is no different. If you left the fandom because you felt it was too negative or because there was some bad people in it, what are you going to do out in real life whenever you encounter some bad people? What are you going to do? Yeet yourself off a cliff because that's your solution? You have to stand your ground and you have to make the call of, do you want to hang around and enjoy something that you enjoy, or are you going to let a little bit of negativity stop you? I mean, everything in life has some negative aspects to it. You're never going to get 100% lollipops and sunshine out of everything you do. You're never going to do that. Life is not like that. So you have to, muddle through the bad and take the good. And unfortunately, some people didn't do that. Some people left because they felt that the fandom had its bad points. But again, I challenge you to find any fandom that isn't that way. But the people that are in the fandom knows better. We know that the fandom itself has so many wonderful aspects to it. And unfortunately, some people just experienced the bad and just took that and left without actually looking at what was beneath the surface. All they saw was a dusty rock. They didn't bother to crack it open and find out that there was a gem inside. The final theory that I have is people have been saying that the fandom is dying simply because too much focus on popular people in the fandom and not enough focus on lesser known people in the fandom. Now, again, I'm not pointing fingers at anybody. There's so many people in this fandom that I have the utmost respect for. But I feel that whenever popular people started leaving the fandom, that's whenever other people started saying that the fandom was over. But the problem was that they failed to realize that there were people still in the fandom and that there were people going to still come to the fandom. I feel that whenever popular individuals started leaving the fandom, what other people didn't realize, they didn't bother turning around to see the other several people behind them that had been in the fandom every bit as long, but they did not even have a quarter of the same popularity. And that's one of the problems I feel, is that people focus too much on the popular people that left the fandom and did not bother looking at the other people that were already in the fandom that did not even have a quarter of the same popularity. And that's why I feel that some people have been saying for years that the fandom is dying, is because they have only looked at big name people in the fandom that decided to leave. In every single aspect of the fandom, they just looked at those people and said, "Oh my gosh, these people are leaving. That means the fandom is over." What they never looked at was the reality, was that there were other people standing right behind them that they may not have heard of before, but they still did stuff in the fandom, and they were still going to be a part of the fandom for years and years to come. And that's what I mean. The torch is being passed. We may not have the same amount of people in the fandom that we used to, but there are still people in the fandom. I said before that you can never, ever have a fandom and keep every single member in it for good. That will never, ever happen. You create a fandom, you're going to gain fans, lose fans. It's always fluctuating. But the real fans are going to be the ones that are going to stay. And there are still people that are still going to be a part of it. And even today, there are still people that, even though they left the fandom, they still respect the fandom and they still respect the people in it. Those are cool people. But there are still people, even today, there are still people that are doing fan fiction, fan art, and even videos on YouTube that are doing reactions, that are just starting out, or maybe they've been doing it for the past few years, but they don't have the same notoriety as other big name people in the fandom. And so they're not getting as much attention, and so people think the fandom is done for because they are not seeing these other people. And that's why I think it's important that we realize that there are newcomers to the fandom and that there are people that have been here for years that, even if they don't have the same amount of popularity of horse fame, they're still here and they're going to be here. And so those are some theories that I've had as to why people feel that the fandom has been dying. But those are some theories that I've had for quite a while now. These are theories now that I've had for a long time now. In fact, I remember actually discussing these with somebody last year, back in 2019. And so I've been thinking about this for for over a year now. But I thought now would be a good time to do it with the anniversary of MLP. I know some people are probably thinking, wait, are you saying that all these other people, ever since 2013, are wrong? Look, I'm not trying to say people are wrong, but I'm here to say that the Brony fandom is not going anywhere because everything that I just said. And those are theories why that I think that people have been saying for years that the fandom is dying. And like I said, you're going to have people that are going to leave the fandom. I mean, it's a guarantee. If anybody ever told me, well, I'm going to start a fandom and nobody is going to want to leave, I will laugh. I will literally fall on the floor and roll around laughing, because I'm going to be imagining how you're going to look whenever you find out the first person left your fandom. You're going to have that surprised Pikachu face. Because every fandom has people that left it. It's a guarantee. It doesn't matter which fandom it is. You're going to have people that are going to leave. But you're also going to have people that are going to stay there too. And so even though people have been saying for years, as far back as 2013 that I know of, that the Brony fandom is dead or dying, or that it's going to die or going to be dead, same thing. It's not going anywhere. I'm here to tell you it's not. The Brony fandom is never going anywhere. The Brony fandom is going to be like other fandoms and other fans of other things. They're going to stay. The fandom is going to stay. And like I said, the torch is being passed to newcomers right now. There are those of us, like myself, that are still holding the torch that we ourselves took up whenever we joined the fandom. but the torch is also being picked up by other newcomers into the fandom even today. And they themselves are the next generation as well. They are just now starting to watch the show. They are just starting to follow different people in different areas of the fandom. They're newcomers into the fandom. They are the next new generation, and the torch is being passed to them. And so the fandom is not going anywhere because there are still new fans, and there are still pre-existing fans too. And in case anybody thinks that I'm dissing anybody that left the fandom, that, I'm not dissing people that respectfully left the fandom. If there are people that left the fandom that left in a respectful way. They left, they just decided they were leaving the fandom, but they still had respect for the fandom and for the creativity of the fandom and for the people in it. Those people I still have respect for, and I respect their choice. But I don't have respect for the people that left the fandom and made it sound like they were above everybody else because they did, or for the people that decided to take away, delete or take away all the stuff that they did in the fandom because they wanted to pull a Konami and suddenly make everybody forget all about it. Those people I don't have respect for. But like I said, I wanted to do this video because I wanted to do this video as an anniversary to MLP and to the fandom itself, and explain that the fandom isn't going anywhere. The fandom is here to stay. I'm here to stay in the fandom, and there are plenty of people that I know are going to stand right there with me, that we're going to keep this fandom going for good. And there are plenty of newcomers into the fandom as well that this torch is being passed to. They are the next generation of the fandom. They're the next generation of Bronies and Pegasisters. They're going to keep the flame of this fandom going after we're gone. And so we're not going anywhere, guys. We're here to stay. So thanks again for joining me. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thanks again for joining me. And Brony on, Pegasister on, Brohoof, and Rock on. Thanks again for joining me. And hopefully I'll see you guys in the next video that I do. Take care.